If you were 2-7, you'd be in a bad mood too.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. And he hits the upright again. That's impossible.
Get your mouth shut. Get your mouth shut. Jerk.
The Bears' season's going to end on a double doink.
If worms had machine guns, then birds wouldn't be scared of them.
Hey, how's everyone doing out there? Welcome to a Word Hole Media presentation of the Limp Dickus podcast. I'm Pete.
My name is Ryan.
I know.
This is the Limp Dickus podcast. We're just a couple Yankee ne'er-do-wells united by our hatred for the Chicago Bears and University of Michigan football. If you can't tell, I am from the South my whole life. I'm sorry for anyone who is just now joining us for the first time. We are definitely not Southerners, but somehow Brian Kelly thought he was, which made me fucking laugh, and most of the world laughed this week. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the final college football rankings. We'll also remedy that situation with our own final Limp Six for the year and talk about our 6-team playoff system that we've been promoting all season. We've got bowl assignments, Fiesta Bowl and Peach Bowl, respectively, for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and my Michigan State Spartans. We have a Heisman snub that I have to go on a rant for at some point. So after that, we will jump into pro football action, talking about the Cowboys and a Lions victory for the first time in 364 days. So let's go ahead and kick this motherfucker off. Well, I think we need to get into the biggest news story of the year, the final college football rankings. Took all season, but we finally got to a real ranking show, Selection Sunday this past Sunday. The only one that mattered. Everything prior to that was a complete fabrication, just for pure entertainment, clickbait, to sell some ads. All of it was meaningless until Sunday. And we got our final rankings, and I don't think anyone was too terribly surprised what the final four ended up being. Maybe the order in which they were.
I called it perfectly.
Yeah.
It's captured on Twitter.
I've seen it. Many have seen it. Yeah, so Bama, after really beating the fuck out of Georgia in the SEC championship game, took over the number 1 slot, jumping up from number 3, jumping right over Michigan. That was a bit of a surprise, maybe. Clearly not to you, but there'd be an argument to be made for Michigan, who easily handled Iowa in an embarrassing Big Ten championship game, where somehow Kurt Ferentz and the Hawkeyes thought they could punt Michigan to death, and that did not work out so well, as Michigan just trounced them essentially. So you can make an argument where Michigan would be the number 1 team, having been number 2 the previous week. I guess I'm not surprised that Alabama gets favorable treatment from the committee, because we've seen that over and over and over again. Georgia drops to number 3, essentially, just so we don't have to see the rematch for the first round. We might see it in the championship, of course, but I think that was they say they don't do those things, for matchup reasons, but we know what's going on. Cincinnati, number 4, the first group of 5 school to ever make the playoff, which is momentous. Not surprising, considering they are undefeated, the only undefeated team in the country. If we want to talk about our rankings, I think ours would be fairly similar, except, we've had Cincinnati and Georgia number 1 and number 2 for many weeks, because they were the only undefeated teams left. So I think by logic, we'd have to move Cincinnati to number 1, since they won their game, and now they're the only undefeated team left in the country. Is that where your head was at for our final ranking?
I went Cincy 1, Michigan 2.
Yep.
Bama 3, Georgia 4, Notre Dame 5,
Yeah, that's
and then Michigan State 6.
wow. I think after what Baylor did, Baylor winning the Big 12 championship over, really Oklahoma State was going to be had a chance to make the real playoff with the number 4 ranking possibly if they had won that. They came an inch short basically. Were you watching the Big 12 championship? That was a fun game. That was probably the best game of Saturday by far. I was going to move Baylor to number 6. I was definitely going to have Notre Dame to number 5. I was going to put Baylor in. I didn't think of Michigan State just because they didn't even play in a championship game. They would have the same record as Baylor, I guess. No, Baylor would have one more win. They finished 11-2, or State's 10-2. I appreciate the generosity of you throw my team in there, which would be good.
They beat the number 2 team in the country.
That's true. That is true. Which would
no one else has that on their resume.
Which would also be my favorite thing of the playoff of this season. I'm actually, we are united by our hatred for University of Michigan football, but I think the fucking funniest thing that could possibly happen is if Michigan actually somehow won the national championship this year, and yet Spartan fans could hold it over their head for all time. That, we beat you that year. So what does that really mean?
Whoop-de-doo.
I think it'd be so great for them to finally have that, and Spartan fans would just always have it hanging over their head.
I don't think I would. Nah, I'm good with Michigan not winning anything else for the rest of the year.
It's a double-edged sword right there. But So yeah, I guess our final ranking.
I'm fine with Baylor too. I was like, why not put MSU 6? They beat the number 2 team in the country.
I think it'd be hard to put Michigan State ahead of Ohio State if they have the same records, both 10-2, and Ohio State beat the fuck out of Michigan State. So,
Michigan beat the fuck out of Ohio State. It's all it's all
the transitive property.
Yeah, it's all, and who did what later? I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
Fuck
Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State's not making our top 6.
Let's just remove my suggestion and go with Baylor and call it a day.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with it. I think, and I think that's fair. I think the whole point we've called this a limp 6 all year, and it's instead of doing our top 10 every week or top 25 every week, which would take hours. 6 is a good number, but mainly because we're proponents of, or at least I am. I think you've joined aboard the 6-team playoff ship. I kind of really enjoy the 4-team playoff, but I know people want more. I just don't want it to expand. 8 wowould be the extreme limit, but people are talking about a 12.
Yeah, they're talking about 12 to 16, and I'm just like, that's too much.
Well, it wrecks. The last 2 weeks of this season were really de facto playoff rounds. Of the regular season, and the whole season is basically a big playoff. Maybe a double elimination. You can lose 1 game, but you can't lose 2 games over the entire season. Where if we go up to 16 teams, it's going to be, there's potentially even 4 lost teams that could make it. Because you'd have conference tie-ins, every conference champion would get in. Then you'd have some at-larges. The only plausible one, I guess, would be the 8-team playoff, where you put all 5 of the major conferences, basically their conference championship games of the first round of the playoffs, because each of those winners then gets the automatic bid. So you'd have 5 automatic bids and then 3 at-larges. I could live with that. I like the 6-team system just because you could reward the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country.
With a bye. With
bye weeks. Then that number 1 and number 2 it tangibly means something. And I think that would be pretty awesome. And again, it could be a playoff committee just like we have now, and they would just determine who's number 1 and number 2. I think this year it's pretty clear, in their rankings at least, that they would put Alabama and Michigan as those number 1 and number 2 teams. I don't think there'd be too much controversy about that. Then you'd have essentially 3 versus 6 and then 4 versus 5. And so you'd have in their setup, it would be Georgia versus Ohio State and Notre Dame versus Cincinnati in the rematch. This goes back to how they can manipulate things. I think they would switch those around. I think they'd move Georgia to number 4. So it'd be Georgia, Notre Dame, and then Cincinnati, Ohio State for the Battle of Ohio. And then the winners of each of those face off against the number 1 and number 2 seed. So I think that's cool. That only adds 1 week to the whole playoff system too. So I think that's a plausible one. So I think that'd be pretty cool. I guess in our scenario, we'd have Cincinnati and Michigan 1 and 2 with the bye week. So we'd have Baylor versus. Do we have Georgia at number 3?
No, Bama.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we had Bama at number 3. So that'd be a hell of a match. Baylor versus Bama, and then Notre Dame
and Georgia.
So either way, it comes down to a pretty similar thing. But that's where I think that's a fun solution. If everyone's dying for expansion, I'd at least like to slow the rate of expansion, because once we get 6 teams, they're going to want 8 teams. Once we get to 8 teams, they're going to want 12 teams. So I think in incremental steps is the way to, if they're going to expand the playoffs, I think that's the best way to do it. And again, with the end goal of keeping it as small as possible. But I don't know. I think that was a fun exercise. We've done this the whole season long. I think we went through the whole process similar to the way the playoff committee did. You and I had different philosophies, but we kind of stopped butting heads at the end by, we kind of just come up with a consensus. We know how each other thinks. I'm sure those committee members, they didn't have to have really long debates after the first few weeks, because they got to a consensus and they got to a group mindset and a philosophy. So I don't know if that was a window into how the playoff committee may or may not work, but it was fun for us.
There interesting note on the final 2 weeks of their rankings. Their rankings, this is the only time this happened. The final 2 weeks were top 6 were exactly the way the BCS computer would have finished them.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, they can look at that. They can look at anything they want, and maybe they just had that computer right there in the room with them as a bit of a guide, or as a tiebreaker, or something else.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks, that it's exactly, if they were using the old computer, all the plugging in the different rankings and then the strength of schedule and all that, everything would have been exactly the same. So
the irony.
So now I got to get rid of my bring the computer back, because it really is just a bunch of computers in the room.
They just brought the computer in.
Yeah, they're just like, well, now the fun's over. Let's see how it should really be. But the computer would have had Alabama at number 1.
Interesting. Yeah, I saw the strength of record stuff, and that's some of what they trotted out there to show how Alabama should have been ranked number 1 over Michigan, number 2. I saw the strength of record, strength of schedule, all that stuff. And it was, and obviously advantage Alabama. So it's almost like they had that in their back pocket to justify everything or shoot down any arguments. These people aren't paid, I don't believe, for any of this. So it's not like these are elected positions, or they're fighting for power or have to justify anything. I think they're just, they've got some financial, you could say, financial ties to this, as they are associated with universities and conferences that profit off of these things. So maybe there could be some, we've talked about the possible corruption or thinking of TV dollars as their part of their decision process. But I think at least this year, and the way things worked out, we didn't get the anarchy some of us were hoping for. Things kind of played out the way everyone thought. I can tell you one school that was looking for anarchy would be your Notre Dame Fighting Irish, as if Michigan had somehow lost, or if Alabama had gotten blown out, or if Cincinnati had lost, your Fighting Irish would have made the playoff for sure, as they're knocking on the door at number 5. I'm sure you've got some thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just expected Alabama to lose. Georgia's defense has been incredible all season, and after what Auburn did to them, I'm like, This is gonna be. This is the only difference is Georgia has a functioning offense. So this
They were
game,
a 6.5 point favorite going into the game. I mean, everyone thought
this
that, and it's like
this
we're all
game
just
is
fools.
this game is going to be, it's going to be kind of a beatdown for a Georgia Alabama game, and it was.
It started
It
out
just
10-0. Yeah,
it just went the other way.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know what Saban did over the week, but sure woke his guys up.
He does it every time to everybody, to Georgia specifically. I mean, Georgia just cannot get over the Alabama hump no matter what happens. And like you said earlier, I fear that we're gonna just have to watch that again in a month or so.
I mean,
the national championship game.
I'd rather. I hate to say this because I know I'm positive they can't beat them, but I'd rather see Michigan, Alabama, or in the championship.
My two least favorite teams besides Notre Dame, maybe.
Yeah, but at least just because like you said, Alabama has a way of just kind of owning Georgia at this point, and I guess Georgia, I think when you lose the game and you're going for the rematch and it's that close, the losing team, in a weird way, kind of has the advantage because they're the ones who are going to worry about making changes. Where the team that won will be kind of like, why don't we go out there and do what we do?
The same thing, yeah.
But I don't know. No one's. I'm sure a ton of people will watch it. I've become less and less interested in this. Now, if Cincinnati can somehow work some magic and do what would be deemed the impossible, and kind of really the great thing about Cincinnati doing something would be, it's kind of be an embarrassment to the committee who kind of had to begrudgingly, I think, put them as the number 4 team. So that would be interesting to see. But since everything kind of went as is, except for the Alabama when Notre Dame is on the outside looking in, might be better in the long run, because of course we lost our head coach, and Notre Dame quickly they had a list of candidates.
We had a list of candidates, and by the time I put the podcast out, they had hired a guy we never even talked about.
Yeah, well, they took 35-year-old African-American defensive coordinator Marcus Freeman, formerly of Cincinnati, for 4 years of defensive coordinating over there, and made him the new head coach of Notre Dame on a 4-year, $2.5 million a year contract.
Seems to be an insanely popular move. I have seen no negative press about this. He seems like a charismatic, awesome coach. It seems like the Notre Dame brand has gotten a million times cooler in the week's time by losing.
It is unbelievable how losing Brian Kelly has managed,
and his family
with their. I hope that loan went through for their house so they could afford to buy something.
Savings and loan.
He left, and there's a lot of question marks, but it looks like Notre Dame has solidified it quite quickly by losing that Southern gentleman.
All right, we can move to Southern accents now.
Yeah, but Freeman, I think that it's a super popular move. He's young. I mean, he's probably the youngest. I think he is the youngest hire they've ever had at 35 years old. Yeah. What's even crazier, where this story got kind of crazier, was Reese is apparently like, Kelly's like, let's go. You're coming to LSU with me. Their offensive coordinator, Tommy Reese, former quarterback in Notre Dame. And then he's like, nah, I think I'm just going to stay and work with this coaching staff here. So that's a bit of a blow, an unexpected thing for Kelly. So now he's got to worry about hiring an offensive coordinator. What I got excited about when he was hired before any of the games happened was the idea of the Notre Dame making the playoff and then actually winning a playoff game The first one without even just one, not winning the championship game, just winning one playoff game would have immediately trumped anything Kelly had done as the head coach in one swoop. But instead, we get the Fiesta Bowl, and while you and I were pulling for this podcast for the Michigan State Notre Dame matchup, because
I'll get into that in a minute.
It's a storied rivalry that has gone away due to dollars and cents and TV contracts, and I think Notre Dame's the one who pulled it off the schedule, so they're to blame for it.
You're to blame for sure.
Well, Notre Dame looked at their schedule and then said, we don't have as many layup games in a normal schedule as other teams. So that's why they did it. I think it's a terrible move, but whatever. In fact, if they had played Michigan State and Michigan this year and won both of those games, they'd be in the freaking playoffs probably right now.
Lost themselves.
So anyway, they only have themselves to blame for that. Athletic director, was it Swybeck or something like that? Anyway. But the reason I like this matchup against Oklahoma State is because it was kind of debated on here, and it was debated in the playoffs. And like, did Oklahoma State had a better schedule? They deserve to be ahead of Notre Dame. And now, we'll see really who is the better team. Is Notre Dame a better football team than Oklahoma State? And it's also another measuring stick for Notre Dame. Like, where do they stand? We know where they seem to stand against Alabama, and then teams like Georgia and Alabama. But where do they stand against like a Big 12 powerhouse now? So another good measuring stick for them. It'd be great to see in his first coached game in a bowl game for Freeman to walk away with the victory, and that would be impressive, and that would be helpful for recruiting purposes too. So far the 2022 class remains intact. No one's pulled out at the announcement of Kelly leaving, so we'll see. The more to come on that. I'm sure there's plenty of time for people to decommit or whatever. I think they would lose a year of eligibility right now if they did that. But
I don't know what the rules are about that at this time.
Something like that at this point in the game. But
you've got transfer portal things. There's lots of situations.
There's lots of situations. So hopefully that class remains intact, and in the shadow of what seems sort of like grim and ridiculous, I feel like Notre Dame, as to your point, in a very weird way, has become likable to a lot of people who don't like them suddenly.
I have to raise my hand there. I mean, I'm in that boat. I have personal things against Brian Kelly for doing similar things to my alma mater, Central Michigan University, 15 years ago. So he's also just not a very likable guy in general. And immediately Marcus Freeman is 1,000 times more likable. You can tell his players are 100% on board. I mean, the hype videos they're doing in his first meeting with the team as head coach, it gives you chills almost how fired up they are. But I mean, all of it, I guess none of it matters if they don't go out and win games. And
right. You could have the most fun coach on the planet that everyone loves, but who cares? I'll be honest. I'd rather have a freaking asshole and have a championship at the end of the day. So,
Brian Kelly determined on his own that he was unable to do that at Notre Dame and moved to purpler pastures, as we put it last week. And I think he might find himself mistaken. Well, I guess we'll find out. It's going to be a fun test to see. And I have no love for Oklahoma State, so I'll be rooting for the Golden Domers.
Whoa, that should have been the lead. That should have been the lead story. Forget the playoff. Smitty rooting for the Domers should have been the lead on tonight's podcast.
Well, you tried to put my Spartans in the top 6, so I appreciate that. So I'll return the favor by rooting for you guys New Year's Day.
Speaking of your Spartans,
Yeah, well, we talked about the Fiesta Bowl potentially being a matchup between Notre Dame and Michigan State, and that wasn't just wishful thinking on this podcast's part because it would have been great for us to discuss for the next month. That was a big top. Like a lot of pundits had that as a potential matchup, and right now it's number 5 versus number 9, Oklahoma State, and Michigan State was ranked number 10 in the final rankings. So yeah, I think it was literally that close. It could have been Michigan State just as easily, but I think they took the higher ranked team, or I'm not exactly sure how those things are determined. Like I know they all have to work out together. If there's a bidding process where the Fiesta Bowl has first choice, second choice, if that rotates every year, or how that works. There used to be conference tie-ins. That has kind of gone to the wayside after the playoff was formed in 2014. So it would have been great, but Michigan State is still in a New Year's Six Bowl, the famed New Year's Six, which is a little misleading because State is playing in the Peach Bowl on December 30th, not on New Year's Day. I'm not really sure where they get that from. So, I mean, it's trying to be as prestigious as the other New Year's Six Bowls. I'm sorry. I think of the Fiesta Bowl as a step up above the Peach Bowl. That's another reason I'm not quite as amped about that, other than the cool matchup we would have had against Notre Dame. Another reason I'm not super amped is they're playing Pitt, which is a strange match. They did win the Atlantic Coast Conference, believe it or not. We didn't talk about Pitt hardly at all this year, mainly because the only reason we ever brought up the ACC is because of your Notre Dame tie-in.
Yeah.
But I didn't even realize Pitt was any good until late. Did they even play Notre Dame? Is that one of their losses? I forget who their 2 losses are, but
I don't. Did they play Notre Dame this year? I don't think they did. I mean, they should be you guys should win.
They ended the season ranked number 12. State's number 10. So on paper, it seems like a decent matchup, and I think it will be. I think it's definitely a game that State can win, especially getting healthy over the next month. That was a lot of what they just suffered a massive amount of injuries, and they actually had a flu epidemic going through the team the last week and a half of the season. So with the whole month to recoup, hopefully get the offensive line back, and certainly some health back in the secondary, the worst secondary in the nation. I think that helps. The issue is Pittsburgh has a potent passing offense, which could be the Achilles heel for Michigan State, led by Heisman hopeful Kenny Pickett. I had never heard of Kenny Pickett until Saturday, when the whole world heard of Kenny Pickett for the fake slide that he used to his advantage in the ACC championship game, where he feigned as he was on a long run into the secondary. He acted like he was going to go down to slide to give himself up so he couldn't be hit by the defenders, but he didn't actually do it, and fooled all the defenders around him and ran in for a touchdown, which is probably going to lead to rules changes and all sorts of stuff. But I feel like almost it's the only way I could explain why he is now a Heisman hopeful and has been voted as one of the top 4 recipients to go to New York. I'll get into that in a minute. But the other part of the Pitt Michigan State matchup that is fairly interesting is Pitt's coach is Pat Narduzzi, former defensive coordinator for Michigan State under Mark D'Antonio, and the famed no-fly zone defense, where Michigan State actually had one of the best secondaries in the nation, as opposed to the absolute worst secondary they have right now. So that's an interesting tie-in. I was actually thinking Narduzzi at the time, if he had just held on for a couple more years, would have been the heir apparent to Mark D'Antonio. So there's lots of interesting tie-ins. He hadn't done a whole lot with Pitt up until this point, so it's interesting timing that he's finally figured things out there in Pitt, and just in time to face his former school in Michigan State in the Peach Bowl. The huge elephant in the room, of course, with this matchup is how Kenneth Walker III is not going to New York this weekend for the Heisman ceremony.
Unbelievable.
I did not think he was going to win. I've been a homer for him all year long since game 1 against Northwestern. We ran for 200 some yards, many touchdowns. Kind of in jest from that moment, I made him a Heisman hopeful. And as the season went on, it was obvious that he was, and culminating in the 200-yard, 505 touchdown performance against Michigan that we assume cemented him as at least the Heisman front runner, or at least a candidate, but if not the Heisman front runner at that point. And to now be at the point where he didn't even get an invitation to New York is just ridiculous. On top of that, there are no running backs in New York.
Yeah, that's what's disturbing.
There are not
trend.
Yeah, well, there are not 1, not 2, but 3 quarterbacks, and you just look at the numbers. Bryce Young is head and shoulders above Kenny Pickett, and there's no reason for a third quarterback to be there. There's slight arguments you could make for CJ Stroud over Bryce Young, but you don't need 3 quarterbacks to be in New York. I like that Aiden Hutchinson is there. I think it's cool to have a defender amongst the 4. I don't think he has a chance to win it, but how can you not have the nation's, one of the nation's leading rushers, obviously the best top 5 conference running back. It's basically been a crusade against running backs in the Heisman Trophy race for at least the last 5 years. The last time we had
it's crazy.
I mean, it's what it comes down to is the process. I think is flawed. It's not anyone's fault. It's not a conspiracy. It's not just that people love quarterbacks and hate running backs. It's how the process works. It's 900 some plus writers across the country vote for the Heisman, and a lot of them just pick quarterbacks because it's easy to do. And I swear the only way that Kenny Pickett got in is because of the ACC championship game. I can't believe more people have been watching Pitt football all year than Michigan State football. I think it's literally prisoner of the moment. They saw a guy, have an outstanding game on national TV and put him in there. The idea that Kenny Walker could have a running season similar to Derrick Henry's in almost every way, who won the Heisman Trophy 6 years ago, and not even get invited to New York is ridiculous. And I think they just need to reevaluate the process. They take the top 4 vote getters, so they already know who won it. It's got to be Bryce Young, by the way. I mean, you just look at his numbers; he's head and shoulders over everybody else. I think they just they take the top 4 vote getters, and I have to believe that Walker was number 5. And they have taken 5 candidates before, and I forget what the criteria was that year when they did, and they were choosing not to this year. Sometimes they only have 3. It might be the distance between, if there's a large gap between, 3 and 4 and 4 and 5, or that's how they make the cutoff. But I've heard the best suggestion I heard today is Detroit Sports Talk Radio has gone crazy over the last couple of days. Even Michigan fans think it's ridiculous that Kenneth Walker III isn't there. They need to take maybe one, of every category almost, and let them all go to New York for that. Maybe have one, defensive player of the year. There's the Butkus Award or whatever. There's all sorts of awards that are voted in a similar way. Have that be the process to get to the Heisman. You take one running back, take one wide receiver, and take one quarterback and one defender, and that's your group that gets there every year. To exclude that and to needlessly take 3 quarterbacks to New York, it's stupid. It's stupid. And it's not Kenny Pickett's fault. I'm sure he gets to have he has fun in New York this week, but he knows he's not going to win. How could you possibly put him over Bryce Young as a quarterback? It makes no sense. So.
Real quick, since we're talking about Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
Pickett, and that one of their losses was at home to Western Michigan this year. Their other loss also didn't come on the road. It came at home to Miami, against Miami, who is not good this year either.
Yeah.
So, I mean, their defense lets up a shit ton of points, dude. I think it's looking good for you.
Well, they're ranked number 12. They were in the top 20, top teens near the end. They've gotten to number 12, which has to be their highest ranking of the season after winning the ACC championship. So they've ridden the wave and take advantage of being in a conference. I think the matchup, I haven't gotten deep into it, and we've got time, as we've got we've got 3 weeks before the game. I think on the surface, yeah. I mean, they should struggle against Michigan State's offense. It's just a matter of Michigan State's defense being able to hold down that passing attack. But I think the way, at least I'm viewing it, I don't know. I would think a coach and a team would take advantage of anything they can. But I think Michigan State might feel a little snubbed by not getting the Fiesta Bowl bid that was rumored. Again, with a little bit lower tiered Peach Bowl, I think Kenneth Walker III and his teammates might feel directly snubbed by the Heisman atrocity in letting specifically Pitt's quarterback Kenny Pickett in over him. I think those are a couple bulletin board things that they could use to their advantage beyond the basic X's and O's. So, well, I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to get deeper into that, but I think you're right on the surface. Michigan State should be a favorite. I haven't seen if there's an opening line yet, or I'm assuming all those are out at this point.
They're out. I didn't see what it was.
But, we'll break that down in the next few weeks. So that is all I have for now. Unless you had other college thoughts.
No, I am done with my college thoughts.
All right. Well, I think we should take a break here then on the Word Hole Media Network.
Word Hole Media.
Major League A-Holes in the Hole podcast, where baseball opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, and most of them stink. Find us at MajorLeagueAholes.com and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Word Hole Media.
Well, the obviously biggest news in professional football this week is the Lions won the Super Bowl! Or so you would think, based on the post-game celebration in Detroit this week on Sunday. The way that the Lions actually won their first game of the year. First game, not even of the year, in almost 1 year. 364 days between victories. The way that team celebrated was definitely fun to watch, but pretty damn ridiculous considering they are now 1-10-1. The celebration included Coach Dan Campbell grabbing owner Sheila Ford Hamp, throwing her into the air. Essentially, I thought he was going to break her. I didn't realize how tiny that woman is. She's in her mid 60s, maybe 70. She might weigh 60 pounds, and he looked like 10 times the size of her. Picture. I was fearful for her livelihood. Fortunately, she was uninjured in the melee. There were tears, there were cheers, there was liquids being spilled all over the place. The Lions players clearly love their coach, which was super cool to see. And I'm making fun of it, but it was a nice thing considering how hated our previous coach had been by media, fans, players, everyone alike. I think I probably won't even mention his name ever again because it's needless to bring his name up again. So I guess it was refreshing to see a fun moment for the Lions. They finally got off the schneid. A little bit over celebrated considering the depths they're in. I can't imagine how a celebration of winning anything of importance might look if that's how they get what they do for one win. But it was funny. It was definitely a journey to get there to that first win. They could have won many games this season.
They could have, yeah.
Things have bounced the wrong way. They have shot themselves in the foot. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, and that exact same scenario set itself up in one way or the other on Sunday, and Lions fans could see it coming again, how they would come up just short. But it didn't happen this time. Things actually worked out despite their greatest efforts to fuck things up again.
I'm still not even sure what kind of coverage Minnesota was in for that game-winning touchdown pass.
I'm definitely going to get to that. That was comical. That was basically the Vikings SOLing themselves. I'll get to that in a minute, but Lions actually pretty much dominated the game. They took the lead in the first quarter, and by the end of the first half, they had finally breached the 20-point mark. We're leading 20-6, and they had not scored 20 points since game 1.
Yeah, that was everywhere, by the way.
Yeah,
the minute that happened, that was like national news. I mean, I think they broke into other broadcasts to announce
they scored 20 points.
the Lions scored 20 points.
They were ahead with even 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They finally converted their first third down with a few minutes left in the fourth quarter, which is amazing that they scored so many points without ever converting a third down. So they overcame 2 Jared Goff turnovers in the fourth quarter, which is almost impossible. They overcame another incredibly just bizarre fourth down call by Dan Campbell, Danimal Cannibal, as I like to call him. His schizophrenic nature about going for it or being ultra conservative it's impossible to predict at this point. When he goes for it, it is the highest risk, lowest reward situations versus the other way you should do fourth and shorts. And he compounds those by bizarre play calls. They had a fourth down with 4 minutes to go and a 2-point lead at their own 28-yard line, I believe. And instead of doing a quarterback sneak to gain the 6 inches or relying on your beast of a running back, Jamal Williams, they do a play action pass that Minnesota was 100% ready for, and ended up. I don't know if they called it a fumble or how they ruled that, but Jared Goff was completely fucked up on that play. Regardless, it was a turnover on downs, and gave the ball to Minnesota with less than 4 minutes to go. The ball deep in Lions territory, and that looked like it was going to be the game. The irony is it was almost the exact same scenario that presented itself on Thanksgiving, the game before against the Bears, where we broke down how the Lions would have been better off letting the Bears score a touchdown, and just so they could get the ball back and have a chance, where instead they let the Bears run out the clock essentially and kick a last-second field goal and never got the ball back. Well, almost the identical scenario, except I don't know if they were allowing the Vikings to score, but the Vikings did score the touchdown with a minute or so left, thus giving the Lions a chance. Mind you, with Jared Goff as your quarterback, it's not much of a chance. Somehow, though, they were able to ride the arm of Jared Goff down the field and had the ball first and goal, had 4 shots at the end zone with time running out, and blew the first 3 until they had one play with 4 seconds left from the 11-yard line. And while most defenses would guard the goal line in this situation, somehow Minnesota rushed 3 and dropped 8, and basically they all guarded the goalpost. They all went back at the end zone, where that's like a 20-yard pass for Jared Goff, and that is not his forte. The only option Jared Goff really has is a short slant, and that's exactly what the Lions did right at the goal line, the 11-yard slant. Minnesota didn't do bump coverage with all their 8 backs and let an easy score for Ross St. Brown. I always forget his name, but it was so bizarre that, like, I was watching the game. I was standing up. I didn't know what happened. I assumed, just because I'm a Lions fan, that they had dropped the ball or it was just incomplete. But the announcers, I felt like, thought the same thing, because they didn't yell out touchdown right away. They didn't yell out complete pass. I finally saw like another Lion running towards him with his arms up. I didn't see any referees with their arms up signaling touchdown. I don't know what the hell was going on.
There was so much disbelief.
Yes, it was. It was unbelievable that they could actually score on that, because it was just obvious they were going to get down there and then the rug was going to get pulled out from underneath them. But it did not happen that tragic way. It actually worked out. So just a bizarre win. We will take it. Thank you very much. Was it Mike Zimmerman, Minnesota coach?
Yes, Mike. Mike, great defensive coverage. You rush 3, drop 8, and let everyone run so they're able to fall into the end zone for a touchdown. I mean,
it really couldn't have been easier. It was the perfect defense called to let the Lions win. I don't know how else to explain it.
It's similar. It was very much similar to when you watch a defense drop back on a third down and they're all past the first down marker.
Yeah.
So basically saying, if you want to run right towards the first down marker and turn around, you've got an easy throw and catch, because we're 5 yards off of you.
How are they not guarding the goal line?
The closest guy to your receiver was at least 2 yards away.
He got there by the time the ball was there, but he was way behind him. It was wide open. It was a wide open slant. It was easy.
Which all you can hope for is that you prevent the process from being completed by hitting them hard enough to knock it out.
I think that was part of the confusion in the announcers, beyond their disbelief, was the way the camera angle, at least, was. He was directly, like, the defender was obscuring the vision, how you could see.
Yeah, the defender was more to the side of the receiver than he was in any position to make a play.
I don't know. I can't explain it. All I know is it feels like, again, that Minnesota SOL'd themselves and gave the Lions a victory, a much needed victory. I can celebrate this victory, even though I've been, rooting against victories just to make sure they get the number 1 draft pick next year. But they are still in sole possession of the first draft pick, as they are still ahead of Jacksonville and Houston. They're only ahead of those teams by a half a game because of the tie against Pittsburgh. So if the Lions end up winning another game, they will lose the number 1 pick, because most likely Houston and Jacksonville aren't going to win too many games down the stretch, but they also play each other. So one will eliminate themselves from the number 1 overall draft pick consideration. Just by winning a game. Somebody's got to win, unless they tie, I guess. I guess that would work in the Lions' favor, but who knows? So such is the life of a Lions fan, where now I'm worried about what's next, in that I don't want them to win any more games. I can celebrate this one, but I'm dreading another victory, which is an awful position to be in. Next week they've got Denver coming up. Then they have Arizona. They still have Green Bay on their schedule. So
yeah, don't get too. Yeah, I think you have a lot to worry about.
Not too worried about it. So
you just got to be more worried about making sure those. Hopefully, some of those other teams win like another game or two, just to make it a little, more airy. There.
And that's what's nice about Houston and Jacksonville being in the same division. They still play each other one more time, so one of them is going to somehow help the Lions. And even if the Lions do end up with a number 2 pick, that's obviously not ideal, but it's not bad, because right now it's kind of a toss up between Aiden Hutchinson and Thibodeau from Oregon. So, and that may change drastically over this offseason. We'll see. But so I'm not dreading it as much being number 1 or number 2 necessarily. It'd certainly be better by definition being number 1, but we'll see. Somehow things have a way of playing out against the Lions one way or the other, so I don't hold out much hope. Whatever happens, it's going to fail somehow, because that's the history of the Lions. But I guess I got to have a little hope that things work out. And if you get the number 1 pick, that's got to help a little bit. So we'll be paying close attention to that here on out. Although they're going to Denver this weekend, I'm not impressed with Denver in any way, and I could see them somehow fucking things up, and handing the Lions a victory somehow, as improbable as that sounds. I'm not sure the last time the Lions won in Denver, but as we've seen from other matchups this season, it's usually been several decades since they've won at an AFC's team's home field. So we'll find out this Sunday. Mercifully, that is all I have for the Lions this week. It's essentially, like I said, we won. It felt like we won the Super Bowl for a moment there. That we have such few things to celebrate. When we do celebrate, we celebrate like motherfuckers. So, thanks for bearing with me for that.
It was one reason to celebrate the Lions' victory, and another reason to be depressed about the Lions' victory. But more on that in a few minutes.
Nice tease.
As my hatred for the Lions is starting to build again. It's been a long time since I've had any hatred towards the Lions, but it's really building. It's really building this season.
That's what gambling with the Honolulu blue and silver will do to you.
It sure will. But speaking of blue and silver, how about a little 8-4 Cowboys action as they went into New Orleans, their third game in 12 days, and they snuck out with a victory. They pulled out a victory. Their defense took over the game, I guess is the best way to say it, because their offense continued to have struggles. So many things to talk about on the offense. I don't know if it's just the play calling, the lack of confidence in the offensive line now to get off the ball and get the running game going, but in all their victories, except for this last one, the Cowboys have won those games by kind of dictating the pace of the game, and they decide when they're running and when they're passing, and one playing off the other. But in this recent string of games where they've lost 2 out of 3 in that 12-game period, and their other losses on the year. Except for that Tampa Bay game, it just didn't work out for them that game. But the other 3 losses, it all came down to becoming pass happy in those games and getting away from the run. And you might go and look at the stats from the New Orleans game and say, "Hey, Pete, they ran the ball fine," but there was a 56-yard rush for a touchdown by Pollard, and there was a end around by I think it was Cedric Wilson for not Cedric Wilson. He wasn't playing. One of the backup receivers, wideouts, that was for like 33 yards. That was the bulk of the rushing there. Now Zeke had 45 yards, but it was on,
it's not where you're looking for out of Zeke.
14 attempts. That's
Jesus.
A 2-yard per carry average isn't. He's like at 3 yards per carry, which is what he's been averaging over these games. That's not Zeke numbers. He's more of a 5 yards per carry guy.
Is he hurt? What's going on?
Yeah, he's got a knee issue. But if it is bothering him to that degree, you have an able back in Pollard. There's no reason for him not to take over the lion's share of the snaps. You don't have to keep Zeke completely out of the game, but let Pollard get the. It's kind of like that thunder and lightning thing. Pollard's the lightning and Zeke's the thunder. So
I love that shit.
And it works. When you have 2 running backs that have different styles like that, it takes the defense gets thrown off by it, because in Pollard's touchdown, they literally did not realize how fast he was, and the defender taking the angle like slowed up, thinking he was going to slow up and make the move, and Pollard just ran right past them. Like it was ridiculous, and
right into the end zone. He just kind of
right in the
followed
end
him right
zone.
in.
Yeah,
It was hilarious.
it was hilarious, and you know, it was. I was happy the Cowboys won because the NFL, unlike college football, there's no style points in the NFL. A win's a win.
Well, I saw you now have an 89% chance of winning the division. And if you win this Sunday, you've got
Probably goes to 100%.
Yeah, I think it's 98%. So
yeah, and this is the game. You know, this is the game that has been circled on the calendar after they started losing some games because Washington's been winning a lot of games. In fact, I believe they won 4 in a row. It is. But part of the reason this game has been circled on the calendar is this is the game which I mentioned last week, and it's a go. I mean, we're going to have 100% functioning defense, and you saw DeMarcus Lawrence in limited play wreak havoc last week in New Orleans, and you saw Micah Parsons continue his campaign for Rookie of the Year, maybe even Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he leads the league. He's tied for the league with 16 tackles for a loss.
Wow.
That's tied for number 1. He's number 10. He's number 8 with 10 sacks. The thing that's funny about that, that's coming out of the linebacker position. So, you know, most of your sack leaders are normally someone on the defensive end. So, but this week against the football team, the Cowboys get Randy Gregory's back. As I mentioned last week, Gilmore will return to the defensive line. And for the first time this entire season, the front 4 will be the starting front 4 for the Cowboys.
Wow.
So that allows Micah Parsons now to legitimately line up wherever, like Dan Quinn now has the assortment of weapons at his disposal to have Parsons coming out of whatever slot he wants him to come out of. And that is going to cause a lot of issues for all the teams going forward.
Wow.
So if this defense stays healthy, you want to be healthy going into December and into the playoffs, not healthy at that front half of the year and then have these injuries late. So hopefully the Cowboys have gotten the injuries out of the way, and this, you know, after playing those 3 games in 12 days, they've had a 10-game layoff to get healthy. So you'll have Amari Cooper back at 100%. He was only used in about, I think, 50% of the plays even, because he was still having breathing issues.
From COVID.
So
wow. I didn't hear about that. That's tough.
He's reconditioning. You know, he spent a lot of time conditioning over these 10 days to get back into game shape. But I see the Cowboys running on all cylinders and taking the football team for a loss at home in the football field of the football team. And I'm just going to try to say football as many times as possible.
I feel like the Redskins name has officially died. Like we don't make that mistake anymore. I don't hear many people make that mistake anymore. I think football team is 100% caught on. It almost makes you think they might keep that. I've heard, you know, they're still trying to rename the team, but it's caught on. I think people fucking love it. I think they should remain football team.
Why not at this point? Because how hard there were so many low hanging fruit options in Washington to name the team to take this amount of time and I
don't know.
Yeah, I think it's football team going forward.
Football team, that or the Pigskins. I thought that would have been great.
That would have been good. So I think the Cowboys go to 9-4 and take a 3-game lead in that division. I think Philly is not a very good team, and I think Jalen Hurst has not that great of a quarterback. So I think they're not really an issue. I think really it's about beating Washington. They play Washington two times over the next 3 games. So win one of those and you're well on your way to securing the division. But But that's really all I have on the Cowboys this week. I guess it's time for upset specials, which I took a week off because I didn't like anything. So Smitty and I decided to do an experiment.
Yeah, I think by definition, if this was my hypothesis last week, if by definition there weren't any upsets, any underdogs that you wanted that you thought had a chance to win or beat the spread, by definition, you were going to pick all favorites. So I thought we should put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah, so we put $5 each, big spenders, down on a 14-team parlay because of bye weeks, and we made it a little more difficult on ourselves because we're greedy. We wanted $74,000 and some change. So instead of going with just picking, because normally with the upset special, because it's an upset, I say you can just take the team straight up without the points, which is usually that's a much bigger payout. Mm-hmm. So that's my idea of an upset.
Why are we gambling if we're not looking for the biggest payout?
Since we were looking for the bigger payout because we're greedy motherfuckers, we decided to take not only the favorites, but we were going to use the negative points we had to put up against them. And let me just say that it was ruined once first by the Lions.
Yeah, that didn't last long. Don't count on the Lions to help you in any way for anything. Even in victory, they will fuck you up. So
then it was also ruined by Cincinnati. But that took a little longer because that game was going down to the wire at one point, or Cincinnati was looking like they were mounting a comeback, and the game just kind of went on forever, even though they never got really within striking distance. So we were screwed at that point. The most comical portion was how if I had just blindly picked I had a 75% chance of picking an upset special correctly by picking one of the teams in the second game that was an underdog, because 3 out of the 4 second game teams, the afternoon games, won. It was just stupid. But kind of knowing that there was no way Smitty and I were going to win that parlay, I decided to hedge my bets and I went with a 9-team parlay of $5 for a $3,500 payout, which I got 8 out of 9 right.
Oh boy.
You know which one I got wrong?
Oh no.
The Detroit Lions.
No, what are you doing?
The Lions, the fucking Lions. I have a tie this year on straight up bets. That's courtesy of the Lions. And now I was looking at 3,500 simoleons in the face. I was staring it down. And
what are you doing? You only have yourself.
I'm officially off the Lions for any betting going forward. Even though we're doing this in more of a fun way, and I still do it weekly in a fun way. I only spend about $5 or $10 a week. It's not like an issue or anything.
But you do put your money where your mouth is on these upset specials.
Yeah. So
whatever money that happens to be.
I am back this week with an upset special.
Oh shit!
And
the Lions in Denver.
The Lions are not involved in it, nor will they be. Although I could be tempted. It could be tempted later in the year. Never say never. Never say never. But I'm going with a big one, a plus 410. That means $5 there just gets you a 20 just for $5 there. 10, you're up to $41. You get actually 20.50 to be exact. But I'm going with the Giants over the Chargers because I think the Chargers are one of the most overrated teams in the NFL.
Wow.
They nearly pissed away a game they had in hand. Their defense is not good. The Giants got Saquon Barkley back. I think they're going to get the running game going. They're going to kind of control the clock in that game, and they're going to win. They're just going to win the game outright. They're also getting 10.5 points, which they are going to more than cover this week. So,
wow.
There you go. Giants over the Chargers. Plus 410.
Saquon Barkley is back this week? Yeah,
he came back last week, actually.
Okay. So that's a big deal for fantasy, of course. You're not. He's not on your fantasy team, is he?
No.
Okay, that's good because I think we're facing off this weekend in our fantasy league.
Oh, well, that means Ryan's team, Smitty's team's going to drop 250 points or something stupid like that.
I think it was 300, which
almost
doubles the
300.
average.
Yeah.
I do not have the Derrick Henry available, unfortunately, this week.
Yeah, like the Derrick Henry.
Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out between your Inglorious Bastards and my Surrender Cobras.
I'm in 5th right now. Where are you sitting?
I moved up to 2nd this week, but so I still have a shot.
So you have 4 losses, and I've got 5, right?
I think so. Yeah, I believe that's how that.
We're all like within a game of each other, and then there's just complete shit underneath me.
Yeah.
Everyone else, it's very lopsided.
I gotta look up. I don't even know how the playoffs work in ours, like how many teams make it, because you can't find anything on fucking Yahoo's site. I still have never figured that out, but I'm an ESPN guy, I guess. But we'll give you the results of that tough matchup after this weekend. I think we can wrap up this episode unless you had anything else.
No, I think it's that time.
All right. Well, we're going to call that an episode number 28. You can find us on the web at Limp Ditkas. We have all sorts of merchandise available for the holidays. Get the kids a deranged Aaron Rodgers t-shirt, hoodie, or coffee mug. We have all sorts of SOL, same old Lions shit up there. We've got some Spartans merchandise. We've got some Notre Dame stuff up there and a little bit of Cowboys stuff. All fun for the family. Probably not too family friendly, but whatever. Buy some shit. It's the holidays. So.
It's the holidays.
You can find us on social media at Limp Ditkas. You can find us anywhere you'd like to find a podcast. You can find this podcast. So with that, I'm going to say this is Dagger Time. We out. Peace.
Peace.